Every morning as the sun peeked over the horizon, Rosa would gather her cleaning supplies and head to work. She had been doing this for years, cleaning the offices of a well-known corporate building in the heart of the city. The routine had become second nature to her, but no matter how many times she walked through those glass doors, she always felt a certain weight on her shoulders. It wasn't just the work. It was the way people looked at her, as if her worth was only measured by the mop in her hand. She was used to it, though. Rosa had learned to keep her head down and do her job quietly. Her task was simple: make the office shine before the employees arrived and make herself as invisible as possible. But the mocking whispers, the judgmental stares were always there, and it hurt. She kept smiling, though. It was easier to smile than to let them see her hurt. The office building was modern and sleek, with shiny floors and glass walls that reflected the light just right. Rosa would start in the lobby, dusting the counters and wiping down the windows. As she moved through the building, she could hear the faint hum of conversations from the workers inside their offices, speaking about their projects, their meetings, their plans. But every time she walked past a group of employees, she could feel their eyes follow her, their whispers just loud enough to be heard. "She's been here for ages, hasn't she?" one voice would say. "Yeah, I think she cleans this whole place," another would respond with a slight chuckle. "Doesn't she ever get tired of this? She should be doing something better." Rosa heard it all. She knew they didn't mean to be cruel, at least not in the way they thought. They just saw her as part of the background, a person who didn't belong in the same world as them. They didn't know her story, didn't know the dreams she carried or the struggles she had overcome. They didn't see the late nights she spent working to build a business, one that was slowly starting to grow, one that she could be proud of. But no one asked about that. No one saw the ambition behind her work or the pride she took in doing it well. They just saw a black woman in a cleaning uniform, and that was all they needed to know. Rosa had been working in the cleaning business for a long time. She didn't start out cleaning offices, though. She started small, cleaning houses and taking whatever jobs she could get. She worked hard, never complaining, learning the trade and saving every penny she could. Eventually, she started her own cleaning company. It wasn't much at first, just a few contracts with small businesses. But over time, her reputation grew. She was known for being reliable, trustworthy, and for making every space she touched gleam with cleanliness. But in the corporate world, no one knew this side of her. To them, she was just a cleaning lady, nothing more, nothing less. And so, every day Rosa would show up at the building, do her job with care, and quietly endure the whispers. There was one particular group of employees who were the most vocal. They worked on the top floor, in a spacious open-plan office that overlooked the city. Every time Rosa cleaned that floor, they would make sure to comment on her. They'd whisper to each other, pretending to be discreet. But Rosa could hear every word. "Another day, another scrub," one of the younger employees said with a laugh as Rosa passed by their desks. "She must hate this job," another chimed in. "I mean, she's been doing it for years." "How sad is that?" Rosa didn't respond. She never did. She just kept moving, wiping down the desks and picking up the stray papers that people left behind. She had learned not to react. She had learned that it was easier to ignore the negativity than to confront it. And truth be told, there were days when it was hard to keep her chin up. But she did it anyway, because at the end of the day, her job wasn't about the people in the office or their opinions. It was about the work she did and the life she was building for herself. As the weeks went by, Rosa's presence became routine. The employees on the top floor would see her every morning, pushing her cart down the hall, cleaning the same spots over and over again. Some of them were more overt in their dismissive attitudes, while others simply looked at her with indifference. But no one saw her as anything more than a cleaner, except for one. It was a Wednesday morning when Rosa first noticed her. She was an older woman, sitting at a desk near the window. Her hair was neatly styled and her clothes were smart, though not overly flashy. She didn't speak much, but every time Rosa passed by, the woman would look up and offer a small smile. It wasn't the kind of smile that was full of pity or mockery, but one that seemed genuine. Rosa noticed it, but she never really paid much attention to it. She had learned to focus on the task at hand, to tune out everything else, but that morning, something changed. As Rosa was polishing the glass door, she overheard a conversation between two young employees who had just walked into the office. "I think we should just get rid of the cleaning service," one of them said, laughing. I mean, it's always the same woman. She's probably just doing it for a paycheck. I bet she's not even happy. The other employee chuckled. Yeah, I agree. She's been here forever and nothing changes. Why not just hire a new company? Rosa kept her head down, but inside something stirred. She had heard people say things like this before, but today it felt different. Maybe it was the tone in their voices, or maybe it was because for the first time the smile from the older woman at the desk stood out. Rosa wasn't sure. All she knew was that she didn't like it. It stung. She finished her task and quietly walked out of the office, trying her best to ignore the growing sense of frustration. It wasn't the first time she had heard such things, but today it felt personal. As she gathered her things to leave for the day, she realized something important. Rosa had been putting up with this for years, not just the mockery but the feeling that her worth was somehow less than others. She had accepted it because it was easier than standing up and demanding respect, but now for the first time she wondered if that was the right choice. Maybe it was time for a change. Maybe it was time for people to see her not just as the woman who cleaned their offices, but as someone who had worked hard to build something for herself. But for now, she had to get through the day. She put the thought aside, knowing that tomorrow would be another day filled with the same challenges. But something inside her shifted, and as she left the building that afternoon, she made a promise to herself. She would keep going no matter what. She would keep doing the work she loved, but she would also find a way to make her presence known. Tomorrow, she thought, might be different. The days passed and nothing really changed. Rosa kept doing her job as she had always done, quietly and with dedication. Each morning, she'd arrive at the office building, set to work and go through the same routine. She wiped down desks, dusted bookshelves, and polished the floors. Most of the employees had stopped paying much attention to her, and she, in turn, had stopped caring about their opinions. It was easier this way. The mocking comments continued, though. They weren't as frequent as before, but Rosa still heard them. Sometimes it was a muttered word as she passed a desk. Other times it was a chuckle from one of the younger employees as she cleaned the break room. It wasn't malicious, but it stung just the same. They didn't know who she was or what she had been through to get here. They didn't know how hard she had worked. Rosa was used to it by now, but something had changed inside her. A fire had been lit, and it wasn't something she could ignore. For the first time in years, she began to feel a shift in how she saw herself. She had always been content to let people treat her this way, thinking it was just the way things were. But now she didn't feel content anymore. She had started her own business, worked tirelessly to grow it, and yet here she was, being dismissed by the very people who benefited from her hard work. That morning, as she cleaned the top floor, she overheard another conversation, and it was like the final straw. Has anyone seen the cleaning lady today? One of the employees asked. She's always here, another replied with a slight laugh. But I don't know why. I mean, doesn't she have better things to do? Rosa paused in the hallway, standing just out of sight, listening. They didn't even realize she was there, standing in the same building where they worked, the building she had a hand in keeping clean. She could feel the weight of their words like a heavy stone in her chest. They spoke about her like she was invisible, like she didn't matter. As she finished up cleaning the last section of the office, Rosa's mind raced. She thought about how far she had come and how she had built her business from nothing. She had worked tirelessly to establish herself. What if they knew? What if they understood that the cleaning service they took for granted wasn't just some faceless company? What if they knew that the woman they mocked was the one who had built the very company that kept their office spotless? The thought lingered with her as she continued to work. It was hard to ignore. She had built something for herself. She wasn't just a cleaner. She was an entrepreneur, a businesswoman who had carved out a path on her own. Later that afternoon, Rosa found herself sitting in the small office she had set up at home, staring at the paperwork. She ran a cleaning service, but it wasn't just about cleaning. It was about something much bigger to her. It was about providing jobs to people who needed them, about building something that would last. She had started with a single contract years ago, working late nights to prove herself. Slowly, she had expanded. Word of mouth had spread, and now she had contracts with multiple businesses, including the very one where she cleaned every day. As she sifted through the files, Rosa thought about how far she had come. It wasn't an easy journey. There were days when she thought about quitting, days when she doubted herself. But she had kept going, and now she had a successful business to show for it. People called her a cleaning lady, but she wasn't just that. She was so much more. The idea of revealing her true identity to the employees at the office building began to take root. She had always kept her ownership of the cleaning service a secret. Part of it was because she didn't want to seem boastful, but another part of her feared how people would react. Would they respect her more? Or would they just see her as someone trying to show off? Would it change things between them? Rosa didn't know, but she did know one thing. She was tired of being invisible. She was tired of being treated like she was less than. The next time the subject of the cleaning service came up, she would make sure they knew the truth. She would no longer hide in the background, playing the role of the quiet cleaner. She had worked too hard to stay in the shadows. The next morning, as Rosa walked into the office building, she felt a sense of determination. She had made up her mind. No longer would she quietly endure the mockery and the whispered comments. Today, she would take control of the narrative. As she entered the building and began her usual routine, she couldn't help but notice the familiar faces. The younger employees were in the break room laughing among themselves, and as usual they barely acknowledged her presence. But today she didn't mind. Today she felt different. She had a secret that none of them knew, and it gave her a quiet confidence. Rosa continued cleaning the top floor, her mind still buzzing with the decision she had made. She knew that today would be the day, but part of her wasn't sure how to go about it. How do you tell a group of people who've mocked you for so long that you're the one who owns the business they take for granted? Would they believe her? Would they even care? It was during her lunch break that she decided to take action. She knew that the head of the building's management team would be holding a meeting with some of the employees to discuss the cleaning service. She had been invited to attend as the company that handled the cleaning was her own. But she had never gone to these meetings in person before. She'd always let her staff handle things. Today was different, though. As Rosa walked into the meeting room, she noticed the same group of employees she had overheard talking about her earlier. They were seated around a large table, looking through papers and discussing the state of the building's maintenance. She took a seat in the corner, quietly observing. She was dressed in her usual uniform, the same cleaning clothes she always wore. It was easy to blend into the background, to be invisible. But as the conversation went on, Rosa felt herself becoming more restless. She couldn't stand it anymore. They were talking about how the cleaning service wasn't up to standard, about how things needed to improve. They didn't know that she was the one who had been ensuring the office stayed spotless. They didn't know that her company had worked hard to meet their expectations. Rosa raised her hand and the room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at her, some of them with surprise. She had never spoken up at these meetings before. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice calm but firm, "but I think it's important for you to know something." The room was still, and she could feel the eyes of the employees on her, their expressions ranging from curiosity to confusion. "I own the cleaning service," she continued, her gaze steady. "The service that you've been talking about. It's my business." For a moment there was nothing but silence. The employees exchanged looks, unsure of how to react. Some seemed shocked, others looked embarrassed. Rosa could see the realization dawning on them. "I've been cleaning this office for years and I've worked hard to build this company," she said. "It's not just some faceless service. It's my livelihood, and I don't appreciate being dismissed or mocked because of what I do." The room was still, but something had shifted. The employees who had once whispered behind her back now looked at her differently. Some nodded in understanding. Others seemed ashamed of their earlier behavior. Rosa didn't say anything else. She stood up, gathered her things, and left the room. But as she walked out of the meeting, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: pride. She had stood up for herself, and she had done it with dignity. She didn't know what would come next, but she knew one thing for sure. She was no longer invisible. The days after Rosa's revelation were quiet, but the shift was unmistakable. She didn't realize just how much of an impact her words had made until she stepped into the office building the next morning. As usual, she walked through the entrance, pushing her cleaning cart. But today felt different. There was a new energy in the air, a strange stillness that seemed to follow her every step. She didn't hear the usual whispers. The mocking comments that had once followed her around like a shadow were nowhere to be found. Instead, when she passed by the employees, they looked up at her with a quiet acknowledgement. It wasn't the dismissive glances of before, nor was it the subtle sneers. There was a newfound respect in their eyes. Rosa was a little taken aback. She had expected things to be awkward, maybe even tense. After all, she had essentially torn down the image they had of her in just a few short sentences. She had told them she wasn't just the cleaning lady. They had no idea what to make of it. But now, she could see that they were beginning to realize the truth of it. They had no idea who she really was, what she had built with her own hands. The day went on and Rosa carried on with her work, but it felt lighter. There were still moments when she caught a glimpse of an employee staring at her, perhaps thinking about what she had said in that meeting. But no one mocked her anymore. There were no more whispers behind her back. Instead, there were polite greetings, nods of recognition. It was the smallest of changes, but to Rosa, it felt like a huge step forward. She worked harder that day, cleaning the office with a new sense of purpose. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't just cleaning to pass the time. She was cleaning to prove a point, not to anyone else but to herself. She wasn't just the woman who scrubbed floors and emptied trash cans. She was a businesswoman, a person who had taken control of her own destiny. And today, as she wiped down the counters in the break room, she realized something. She didn't need their approval, but just as things were starting to feel normal again, Rosa was faced with an unexpected challenge. Around lunchtime, the head of the building's management team, a middle-aged man with glasses and a neatly pressed suit, approached her. His name was Mr. Latham, and he was the one who had arranged the meeting about the cleaning service a few days ago. Rosa had always seen him in passing, but never had a real conversation with him. "Rosa," he said, his tone polite but a little formal. "Do you have a moment?" Rosa stopped what she was doing and turned toward him. "Of course, Mr. Latham, how can I help you?" He hesitated for a moment, clearly trying to choose his words carefully. "I just wanted to say that I appreciate your candor the other day. It wasn't easy, I'm sure, to speak up in front of everyone like that." He paused, glancing around to make sure no one else was within earshot. "To be honest, I think some of the employees were surprised. They didn't realize that the company they've been working with was yours." Rosa nodded, unsure where this conversation was headed. He cleared his throat and continued. "I've been reviewing the contracts and honestly, we're looking for ways to improve the service. You mentioned your company's work, and I want to take that into consideration. If you're interested, I think we could discuss a new arrangement." Rosa's heart skipped a beat. She had known that her company was good at what it did, but hearing that Mr. Latham was willing to discuss a new arrangement was unexpected. This wasn't just about cleaning anymore. This was about an opportunity to prove to herself that her business wasn't just an afterthought. It was something that could stand on its own merit, with or without the recognition of the people around her. "I'm happy to discuss it, Mr. Latham," Rosa replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I've always been committed to providing the best service, and I'm open to any suggestions you might have." Mr. Latham smiled, a glimmer of respect in his eyes. "I'll have my assistant reach out to you to set up a meeting. It's time we made sure our office is in the best shape possible, and I think you're the right person for the job." As he walked away, Rosa felt a wave of excitement wash over her. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. Her hard work, the long hours, the sacrifices she had made, were finally being recognized. But even more than that, it was a chance to prove that she wasn't just cleaning offices. She was building something bigger than herself. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Rosa cleaned every corner of the office, but her mind kept drifting back to the conversation with Mr. Latham. She knew that this was her chance to take her business to the next level. But it also meant more responsibility, more pressure. She had never been one to shy away from hard work, but this new chapter felt different. It was no longer just about making ends meet or proving she could do it. Now it was about showing the world what she had built and what she was capable of. That evening, as she sat down to go through some paperwork at home, Rosa found herself smiling. She had taken the first step towards something bigger. It wasn't just about getting recognition from the employees or Mr. Latham. It was about proving to herself that she was worthy of all the success she had achieved. She wasn't just a cleaner. She was a business owner and entrepreneur, but the journey wasn't over. She still had a long way to go. The next few weeks would be critical, and Rosa knew that she couldn't afford to let her guard down. She would need to keep pushing, keep striving for more. She couldn't let this opportunity slip away. As she glanced at the calendar on her wall, she made a promise to herself. The next time she walked into that office building, she would walk with confidence knowing that she had earned every inch of respect she was getting. And she wasn't going to stop until her business was where it deserved to be. The next few days were a whirlwind. Rosa spent her evenings preparing for the upcoming meeting with Mr. Latham. She went over her contracts, reviewed her cleaning processes, and made sure everything was in order. She knew this was a big opportunity and she wasn't going to let it pass her by. Then the day of the meeting arrived. Rosa dressed in her best outfit, something that made her feel professional and confident. She was no longer just a cleaning lady. She was a businesswoman, and she was going to show Mr. Latham exactly what she had to offer. As she walked into the building for the meeting, she couldn't help but notice the subtle changes in the way people looked at her. It was as if they were beginning to understand her value, to see her not just as the woman who cleaned the floors, but as someone who had worked hard to build something from the ground up. It was a small change, but it was enough to make her feel like she truly belonged. The meeting with Mr. Latham went better than she had expected. He was impressed with her professionalism, her knowledge, and her dedication to the work. By the time the meeting ended, Rosa had secured a new contract for her cleaning business, one that would allow her to expand even further. As she walked out of the building, Rosa couldn't help but smile. She had done it. She had proven herself, and she knew that this was only the beginning. The weeks that followed Rosa's meeting with Mr. Latham were a blur of hard work and new opportunities. It wasn't just about the contract she had secured. It was about everything that had come with it. She had taken the first step toward growing her business, and now it was up to her to make sure she didn't fall short. As the days passed, Rosa's confidence grew. Every morning when she arrived at the office building, there was a quiet sense of pride in the way she carried herself. The employees who had once mocked her now greeted her with genuine respect. The change wasn't dramatic, but it was noticeable. The once dismissive glances had transformed into polite nods and sometimes even small conversations. Rosa had become a symbol of something bigger. Her actions, the way she had stood up for herself, had made an impact. The employees had started to see her not just as a cleaner, but as a successful businesswoman. It wasn't just about cleaning offices anymore. It was about building a reputation, earning respect, and proving that no matter where you started, you could achieve something remarkable if you worked hard enough. But with the success came new challenges. Rosa had secured the contract with the office building, but now she had to live up to the expectations. She couldn't afford to let anything slip. Every day she worked harder, paying attention to the smallest details to ensure the office was spotless. Her reputation was on the line and she wasn't about to let it fall apart. There were days when the pressure felt overwhelming. Some mornings, she would wake up with a knot in her stomach wondering if she was doing enough. The business was growing, but so were the responsibilities. She had to manage more employees, take care of more clients, and still keep up with the day-to-day work of the cleaning service. It was exhausting, but Rosa never complained. She had built this from the ground up, and now it was up to her to make sure it didn't crumble. One morning, as she was cleaning the break room, one of the employees came up to her. It was a woman from the marketing department, someone Rosa hadn't really spoken to before. She was young, dressed in a bright blouse, and looked a little nervous as she approached. "Hi, Rosa," the woman said, her voice a bit tentative. "I just wanted to say thank you." Rosa looked up, surprised. "Thank you for what?" "For everything you've done," the woman continued. "I know it might sound strange, but you've really inspired me. The way you stood up for yourself in that meeting a few weeks ago, it really made me think. I've been stuck in my own job, not really going after what I want. But after seeing you, I realized I can do more." Rosa smiled, touched by the woman's words. It wasn't something she had expected, but it made her feel like she was making a difference in more ways than she had imagined. "You're welcome," Rosa said. "I'm glad I could inspire you. Sometimes it just takes that one moment to realize you're capable of more than you think." The woman nodded, her eyes brightening. "I've been thinking about starting my own business for a while, but I've been too scared. But seeing how you built yours, how you didn't let anyone hold you back, it's made me realize I can do it too." Rosa could see the fire in her eyes, and it reminded her of herself not so long ago. She had been scared too, unsure if she could ever turn her dream into a reality. But now, standing here, she was proof that it was possible, and maybe, just maybe, this woman would find her own success just like Rosa had found hers. "I'm sure you can do it," Rosa said. "It won't be easy, but if you're willing to work for it, you'll get there." The woman smiled and walked away, leaving Rosa standing in the break room with a sense of fulfillment. She hadn't just changed her own life, she had inspired others to change theirs too. And that was something worth being proud of. But as Rosa continued her work, she couldn't ignore the growing pressure. The business was expanding and she was working harder than ever. The new clients were great, but they also came with higher expectations. She had to make sure every part of the service was perfect. There were days when the fatigue hit hard, and she found herself questioning if she was doing enough. Was she taking on too much? Was the business growing too fast? One evening, after another long day of work, Rosa sat down at her desk, going over the finances. She had hired more people to help with the increased workload, but managing a team wasn't always easy. There were days when things didn't go as planned, when employees called in sick or didn't meet expectations, but Rosa knew she couldn't let that stop her. She had worked too hard to get to this point, and she wasn't going to give up now. She took a deep breath and leaned back in her chair. The weight of the responsibility felt heavy, but she also knew she was capable of handling it. She had always known how to work hard. Now, it was time to trust that the work she had put in would pay off. As Rosa sat there in the quiet of her office, she realized how far she had come. Not just in terms of her business, but in the way she saw herself. She was no longer just a cleaning lady. She was a woman who had built something from nothing. She was a leader, a business owner, and an inspiration to others. But there was one more thing she needed to do. She had never fully shared her story with the employees at the office building. They knew she owned the cleaning business, but they didn't know the full story. They didn't know what she had overcome to get to this point. The next day, after finishing her work, Rosa decided to stay a little longer. She had a message she wanted to share. She walked into the break room where a few of the employees were sitting and chatting. They stopped talking when they saw her, and for a moment the room was silent. "I just wanted to say something," Rosa began, her voice calm but firm. "When I first started here, I was just a woman with a mop and a dream. I wasn't always treated the way I should have been. People mocked me, made jokes about me, and looked down on me. But I kept going. I worked hard and I never gave up. And now I'm here running my own business. And I want you all to know that if you have a dream, no matter what it is, you can make it happen. It won't be easy, but if you work for it, you'll get there." There was a pause, and then one of the employees, the same woman who had spoken to Rosa before, stood up and clapped. Slowly, others joined in. It wasn't much, but it meant everything to Rosa. She wasn't just a cleaner anymore. She was someone who had earned her place. That day, as Rosa left the office building, she felt something new. Peace. She knew that she was on the right path. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but she was ready for whatever came her way. She had fought for this life, and she wasn't going to let anything or anyone take it away from her. Months had passed since Rosa's decision to open up about her business. The days were still long, filled with hard work, but there was a newfound sense of purpose behind everything she did. Her cleaning service was thriving, and the office building where she had once been overlooked had become one of her most significant clients. But it wasn't just the growth of her business that filled her with pride. It was the way people now saw her. It wasn't about the respect she had gained from the employees or the business world. It was about knowing that she had done something for herself, something no one could take away from her. She had worked tirelessly, faced obstacles, and overcome challenges that many thought would break her. But here she was, standing taller than ever, and no one could deny her place in the world. Her reputation continued to grow, not just within the office building, but also within the city. Word had spread about the woman who had started from the bottom and built a successful business from nothing. People admired her resilience, her ability to overcome adversity, and her commitment to doing things the right way. As her business expanded, Rosa found herself managing more contracts, more employees, and more responsibilities. There were days when she felt overwhelmed, days when the pressure of it all seemed like too much. But every time that happened, she reminded herself of how far she had come and why she had started this journey in the first place. It was late one afternoon when Rosa received a call that would change everything. It was from a woman she had met years ago, someone she had worked with briefly when she was still cleaning houses. The woman, Maria, had recently started her own business and was struggling to make ends meet. She was looking for advice, looking for someone who could help her navigate the challenges of running a business. "Rosa, I need your help," Maria said, her voice full of uncertainty. "I've hit a wall. I've tried everything, but I'm not getting the results I want. I know you've been through it, and I thought maybe you could give me some advice." Rosa listened carefully as Maria explained her situation. She could hear the frustration in her voice, the feeling of being stuck. Rosa knew exactly what that felt like. She had been there herself, struggling to find her footing, wondering if all the hard work would ever pay off. "You're not alone, Maria," Rosa said, her voice calm and reassuring. "I've been where you are. It's not easy, but you have to keep going. You have to believe in yourself even when it feels like no one else does." Maria paused for a moment, and Rosa could hear her take a deep breath. "I know it's hard," Rosa continued, "but the only way to get through it is to keep pushing. Don't let the setbacks define you. Use them as fuel to keep going. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. Reach out to people who can help you, learn from their experiences, and keep working hard." After they spoke, Rosa couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Helping someone else find their way felt just as fulfilling as building her own business. It reminded her of the journey she had taken, the obstacles she had overcome, and the lessons she had learned along the way. But as much as Rosa was helping others, she couldn't ignore the fact that her own life was still in a constant state of motion. The business was doing well, but the pressure of maintaining that success was always there, hanging over her like a weight. She had employees to manage, clients to please, and contracts to fulfill. The responsibility felt enormous at times, but Rosa had learned how to handle it. She had learned how to prioritize, how to delegate, and how to stay focused on what truly mattered. One evening, after another long day of work, Rosa sat down in her office and looked out the window. The city lights twinkled below, a reminder of how far she had come. It was easy to get caught up in the hustle, to focus only on the next task or the next challenge. But in that moment, Rosa allowed herself to appreciate how much she had accomplished. She had built a successful business. She had earned the respect of those who once looked down on her. She had proven to herself and to others that anything was possible if you were willing to work for it. The next day, Rosa had a meeting with a new client, another large office building looking for a cleaning service. She walked into the meeting with confidence, knowing that her reputation spoke for itself. As she sat down across from the building's management team, she could see the respect in their eyes. They weren't just looking at her as a cleaner. They were looking at her as a businesswoman who had built something of value. The meeting went smoothly, and by the end of it, Rosa had secured another contract. It was a major step forward for her business, and it felt like a significant achievement. But even as she celebrated the victory, Rosa knew that this was just the beginning. There was still so much more to do, so much more to achieve. Later that afternoon, as she was wrapping up her work, one of her employees came to speak with her. It was a young woman who had been with her for a few months, someone who had shown a lot of potential but was still learning the ropes. "Rosa, I just wanted to thank you for giving me the opportunity," the woman said, her voice sincere. "I've been in this industry for a while, but working with you has been different. You've taught me so much, not just about cleaning, but about running a business and being strong. I never thought I could do something like this, but you've shown me that I can." Rosa smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. It wasn't always easy to see the impact she was having on others, but moments like this reminded her that she was making a difference. She wasn't just running a business. She was creating opportunities for others just as she had created one for herself. "You're doing great," Rosa said. "Keep believing in yourself. You've got what it takes." As the days passed, Rosa continued to build her business, taking on new challenges and finding new ways to improve. The road wasn't always smooth, and there were moments when she felt overwhelmed, but Rosa never wavered. She had come too far to let anything stop her now. One evening, after finishing a particularly long day, Rosa sat down at her kitchen table and looked over her plans for the future. Her business was doing well, but she knew there was always room for growth. There were always new opportunities to explore, new ways to improve, and new people to help. She had built this business from the ground up, and now it was time to take it to the next level. But as she thought about the future, she also thought about the people who had helped her get here, the employees who believed in her, the clients who trusted her, and the friends and family who had supported her along the way. She realized that success wasn't just about the business. It was about the people you brought with you on the journey. It was about the relationships you built, the lives you touched, and the difference you made in the world. And with that thought, Rosa felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had come a long way, and she knew that no matter where the future took her, she would always be proud of how far she had come.